the rhythm of life around you and the rhythm that you want to create in your life. Um, and you, by in the business you're doing, you're creating a certain rhythm, okay, and that is giving out a certain energy and attracting a certain energy.
Mm-hmm.
So as I say, it's self-imposed busyness, but just be aware of the rhythm that you're creating around you, because that will draw, be the way you draw in energy, in out energy.
Yeah, I understand. It's not always so. Is it okay if I tape this? So we just
Yeah, sure.
okay. Um, yeah, I understand. There's something to be said about while you're doing it, always be able to emanate order and peace and etc. But I do find that in one person's body and there's a lot of activities to do. It's not always like it's on not always in appearance like super calm because you have to fix this when it comes up and fix that when it comes up and a lot of like and then you run into technical things you don't know how to do, like for example I've been wanting to make these inspirational quote image kind of things for Facebook, but my ability for Photoshop was only up to a certain point, so I could just sit there and try to figure it out for hours, or I decided I'm gonna just post a little gig on Elance and try to see who can help me. But then after you post it and people respond in a day, maybe you already found the solution. So then you have to go and tell them, I'm sorry, I don't need it anymore and stuff. So I think there's a lot of just like twists and turns. And I think the eight extremes really help me when I'm reminded of Buddhist teaching that there's no production, no cessation, and all that. And so then I'm training my mind to see it as a continuous stream and not, even though each activity does conventionally look like it's a separate activity, but it's all continuum of just bubbling up and down, and I don't have to um, get more worked up, about, well, did I do this on time? Did I do that on time? Because anyway, it's all part of the same thing. So that helps.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I understand that. I came out of a very busy business life, and I used to carry around my little diary and my little notebook everywhere I went, so that I would make notes and enter into my diary. In those days, we had diaries and notes. We didn't have notebooks and computers like we do today. But that came out of that very busy kind of lifestyle. Yeah.
Yeah.
And as I've developed my purpose here on this planet, um, I've learned to kind of surrender my busyness to the universe. And now I find the activities that I'm engaged in and the outcomes are effortless. I don't have to try. I just have to show up. And I just have to stay in resonance with myself. Yeah. So yeah, I understand busyness, and it's not. And the important thing about it, one must never judge what it is that you're doing, and because everyone's allowed to be as busy as you want to be. Um, but it's just to be aware that in your busyness, you are creating a certain rhythm, and you have to, try to figure out, is this in resonance with my inner
Yeah.
rhythm, or am I following the external rhythm?
Yeah.
Am I being pushed into this by something external to me?
Right.
And when that starts to happen, it can very easily draw you into its own rhythm,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is a really good point. And the other day I was reading something about how really a lot of the suffering that we experience is actually judgments um, or things like predetermined set of ideas of how things ought to be and what have you. And I think that was helping me understand that um, when we're doing things and going with our own rhythm, we don't have to abide with a certain external standard, because everybody's rhythm is different. It's just when you're doing it, I think part of the self awareness is knowing what your rhythm is, and I think for all of us, it's different rhythm at different times, because
Yeah,
it could be something different or vice. It's just going to change, and I think a lot of times when we're dealing with different people, different rhythms come out because we're syncopating our rhythm with other people's rhythm. So then we have to learn to adjust to the surroundings rhythm.
yeah, but be
But be
careful.
careful.
Try to adjust the surrounding rhythms to your own rhythm,
Yeah.
or be aware that if they're not uh, in syncopation with you, then you're in the wrong band.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I
Yeah,
understand. I mean, it's kind of hard to put in words. I know what you mean. Like, for example, certain people and things show up, and I used to try to, cater to all of it and try to answer and stuff. And I realized some rhythms are so out of sync. It's just not a good idea because even as you try and they try, you get into bumps all the time. They have different ideas and you have different ideas, and you wind up going in this little convoluted vortex and you can't get out. But then some, I think in regular world they just call it you work with people that you get along with.
yeah,
so so that just means you're both syncopating at rhythm that you're comfortable, and you don't have to outstretch with each other to do catch up. You're both at rhythm when you're working together. You're both at rhythm that you feel comfortable with, um, and there's not a lots of snags going on. So that helps a lot. And I think the world oftentimes calls it in more blunt terms, like get rid of things and people that don't work for you anymore. It sounds really rude, but I think in some way it's saying the same thing. We don't have to be mean about it, but we also have to know sometimes certain rhythms are too out of stretch, and it just creates such demand on energy. It's not worth it.
yeah. Because we often talk about frequency, but we often forget
Yeah.
properties of frequency. Frequency is about the rhythm, which is the forget what they call it, and the intensity, which is called the amplitude. So,
Yeah.
so you have waves of frequency at a certain rhythm, and they can go up into different heights. The height determines the note that's achieved. The frequency will, the rhythm will determine, how it's heard, how it's perceived, how it's picked up by the universe and your ears as well. You hear certain,
Yeah.
and so when you keeping your own rhythm, you're keeping a constant rhythm, and then you can change the amplitude. So sometimes what you're doing now is you're increasing the amplitude, so you're very busy, but you can still hold on to that same rhythm. You know,
Yeah.
understand
Yeah.
it. There are two parts to frequency. It's not just the rhythm and how frequent um, a line crosses over the midpoint, but it also has to do with the amplitude. So you can be very busy in amplitude, but keeping your own rhythm, the spaces between the waves, if you know. And
Yeah, I understand. I think that's actually the optimal. I mean, there is no definite optimal all the time, but there is something to be said about having like always a comfortable um, combination of that frequency and also amplitude. And again, it changes. It can change a lot throughout the day and different phases. But I think that is the key. And I think if a person wanted to actually have a lot of output and be able to create a lot, it's actually quite essential that the amplitude is big also. You
yeah,
know, Yeah, because then there's more power behind everything you do, and I think that amplitude also comes from concentration. Just when we learn to intensify our efforts and concentrate, then the energy is less dispersed and it's able to just go laser pointed in one direction, and you can go farther with it. You know?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's just I just thought I'd make you aware of that, so you understand that when we talk about frequency, we're talking about two things. The one is the rhythm, and the other one is the amplitude. Um, because I get it a lot. People post things about frequency, and they don't understand what frequency is. They have imagine. I often ask people, "What do you mean by frequency?" And they will talk about the height of the waves, but they won't talk about the rhythm, or they'll talk about the rhythm, how it must be constant, but they won't talk about the amplitude. And it's holding that energy of your own spatial rhythm. And that comes from heart. Your heart beats at a certain rate, and the earth beats at a certain rate. The earth has a base pulse rhythm. They call it the human resonance. Yeah, quite important. And I'm getting a lot of whistling sound coming through. Are you? No, I just wanted to know what it was because I could hear this. It sounded like somebody was hissing behind you.
No, they're vacuuming outside the door. They're just doing some community vacuuming.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because we can't really control when people are doing these community things. They just come and show up and they do it. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
I understand. And what I have read before was that there was something not quite right about the Schumann rhythm, Schumann resonance, and that was actually part of the reason that the planet has been under so much planetary static and people's mental body is not cohesive, and there's a lot of distractions and things because we're literally swamped in a pool of chaotic, larger environmental rhythm. Um, do you agree with that?
Well, I don't think. I think the understanding of the Schumann resonances is what the problem is. The Schumann resonance is measuring the rate at which the Earth pulses, and the rate at which the Earth pulses is the same rate at which we pulse.
Mm-hmm.
Our brains have the same brainwave frequency as the Schumann resonance. So as
Mm-hmm.
Schumann resonances increase, so our brain rate increases. Now, what people fail to explain is there's a symbiotic relationship between the Earth and our brain,
Mm-hmm.
and we affect the resonance of the Earth by what we do and our activities on the planet. But that gives us a feedback of the pulse. So, in a sense, the Earth is collecting all this resonance around the Earth from different beings who live on the planet, and it's then pulses it back. So, as people's rhythm increases, so the Earth's rhythm increases, and that comes back to Earth. So, the Schumann resonances vary between 8.7 hertz and up to as much as 12 hertz. And in the last couple of years, we've been around the 11 range, which is unusual because the bass pulse rhythm, the Schumann resonances were very constant for a very long time, just going between 8.5 and 9.7. So the Earth is experiencing the frequencies of the beings on the planet, which has been fed back to them, and that's increasing the frequencies. And there's been a steady increase of the Schumann resonances since about 2006. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's just people don't understand that, we have to stay within our resonance. We can't just keep raising the frequency of the planet when everyone's not ready, because everyone's going to pick it up. So the activities are going to get bigger, and they're going to get more. What's the word I'm looking for? Activated, because it's activated in your DNA. Your DNA picks up the frequencies as well. So it's good to have the Earth frequency raising, but not everyone's ready for that. You know.
So, do you think that this frequency raising is actually a positive thing in the sense a lot of spiritual people when they talk about higher vibration frequency, they're alluding to something that is higher consciousness, right? But not everybody uses it in a very technically precise way. So some people say vibration, some people say frequency, and I know Keylontic Science was even trying to make a difference between the two, and it was saying how they're actually, I can't remember exactly, but they could be, people could use it to try to indicate the same thing, but they're winding up saying something different to each other. And then there's another thing about like frequency that I was just reminded when you're talking is a lot of times when we talk about brainwave frequency, we say like the beta wave and the alpha wave and theta and delta and all of that, and oftentimes I relate to like this frazzled state of busyness as they call it the beta range. It's not really enlightened state of mind. It's just hustling, bustling, kind of busy to try to get things done. But it's not like this ascended awareness, as in, I think, actually in more calmer brain states in the theta state. I think it comes through more like your ideas then are just more transcendent. But it seems like in the world to get a transcendent idea implemented, you wind up having to do a lot of beta wave activities because now you're dealing with a whole bunch of people and activities and softwares that work and then don't work. So you have you suddenly sink down again. So there's a lot to this whole thing.
Yeah, there is. And I learned this lesson, quite a long time ago. I used to do a lot of frequency generating through techniques and through thought forms and meditation, and it was great. I felt great, and everything seemed to be going really well. Then suddenly, I'd walk past a light bulb and it would pop. And then
Wow.
one day I was driving to work and my car stopped. And I couldn't understand why my car wasn't working. And someone stopped to help me, and they got into my car and turned the switch and it started. Well, they did no, your car's fine. And then I got in and it wouldn't start. So, I was puzzled by this, and then I had a friend come around and explain it to me, and he'd experienced the same thing. He said, when you get your frequencies too high, things around you don't work very well. I noticed like my computer just wouldn't boot up. Lots of things around me, especially anything electrical, was interfered with. So then he taught me how to be grounded. He said, if you generating a lot of frequency, you have to ground that frequency so the frequency can go back into the earth. And so I used to go down to the beach and after work, on my way home from work, and plant my feet in the soil and do a couple of techs on the beach, and I could feel the currency running, but it was running through me into the earth. And then I moved up to Johannesburg, and there was no beach for me to go and plant my feet into. So I started doing things that, other things that ground you, like I smoke, and that to me is very grounding. Other things you can do is just, go spend some time in the garden. I walk around, most of the time I walk in around barefoot. When I get home, especially in summer, I very seldom have shoes on when I'm home. I walk around with barefoot. So little things like that to ground the energy. Now,